Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, January the 8th, 2026, and today I am talking about wool in the garden. We're taking a CSA crop diversity question, and we talk trellising in wider beds. So let's do it. All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and feeling well and all those good things. In that vein, how are your resolutions holding up? I personally did not make a hard and fast resolution this year, mostly just continuing to work on my role as a husband, soccer coach, farmer, dad, all those things. There's a never-ending list of things I could be working on about myself, but life is long, and there's just like plenty of time to get absolutely perfect, just in time to pass away, I guess. But it's all about the journey, though, right? Speaking of journeys, how awesome was that conversation that we had yesterday with Eric Nordell? I loved that. Really enjoy chatting with him every time I get the chance, but that was definitely one of my favorites. When I first started out farming, I really wanted to farm with horses. And in fact, when Hannah and I put Rough Draft into our farm name, that was part of the reason, as I've talked about before. We just assumed one day we'd kind of get there to having draft horses. So we figured it was somewhat aspirational putting it in there. But honestly, we've never, even now, had access to the amount of land it would require to have a couple workhorses. Plus, I would want at least a couple years of working with them before setting off with my own team. But I subscribed for years to the Small Farmers Journal and read multiple books on farming with horses. It just never really quite came together for us. But I still have a lot of love and affection for the practice, and people like Eric just show how beautifully it can be done. If I were young, like unattached person again, looking for something, some direction or some opportunity, or just to engage with agriculture, I'd probably be hitting up growers like Eric and seeing if I could work for them for, a year or two and just learn the ropes, or reins, as it were. Otherwise, on our farm, the seed starting has started over here. Got my onions and shallots started yesterday, along with some more lettuce. Even started putting some of the November lettuce into the January ground in our tunnel, though it's a little smaller than I would normally plant it at, but it'll work. I'm just trying to bust out as many things as I can now to get a little bit ahead for the season, while it's nice and in hoodie weather outside. As we go along, I will share what I'm doing and when throughout the season. But I should also remind everyone here to not necessarily follow my planting schedule. I have tunnel space and greenhouse space to use, and that makes my farm, somewhat unique. I am in Zone 6B in Kentucky, which will be behind people in warmer climates and ahead of people in colder ones. I know my area well, and I know how and when to start certain crops for the best success. I just want to make sure to not add pressure to people who think that they should be, starting field lettuce right now. For most of you, you probably should not. The lettuce I'm starting now will go in the tunnel. And also, you still have time to start onions later too. Just the later that you start them, the smaller they'll be, but there's plenty of time. So anyway, with that caveat out of the way, it is Thursday, which means we are going to try and get caught up on some Patreon questions. I love these episodes because I never quite know in what direction we're going to go. Today, we will kick it off with this question from Laura Zwanek, who asks, quote, "Hi, Jesse. I've been really enjoying the mulch segments. Curious if you've heard of / worked with wool as a mulch. I've seen other farmers mention it. Seems like a practical option for people who have sheep. Biodegradable wool landscape fabric would be a cool idea." I agree. That's kind of an interesting idea, apart from its need to be replaced every 1 to 2 years. End quote. Okay, great. Thanks for this question, Laura, and longtime listeners will note that I've done a segment or two on wool mulch. So I will answer the question, and I will take it in a slightly different direction to add to the conversation a little bit more, because there's always something new to add. It's kind of what I love about the show, filling in those nuances. And also why I want to encourage Patreon members to never hesitate to ask a question, even if you fear it's been asked before. It's a good challenge for me, and you never know how the science or research or my own experiences or thoughts have changed. All right, so I have not, as I've said before, worked personally with wool as a mulch, really in any capacity. We raised sheep for many years, but they were Katahdins, which is a hair sheep, meaning a meat breed, and not a wool breed. So we never really had to shear the hair sheep. Our mentors did have wool sheep when we were learning and living in that area, and we got to see them shear their sheep once or twice, which was a rather ambitious job. And in that way, it's a little hard for me to imagine, for instance, raising your own wool sheep for your own mulch, unless you are on a super small scale and are willing to put a lot of work into becoming a whiz with the shearers, because it definitely have to be done fast. There are whizzes out there for sure that can shear sheep incredibly fast, but that takes quite a bit of practice. Now, generally speaking, wool is a cool idea as a mulch, as it can be regenerated. it. And it can theoretically make a decent mulch, provided you find enough of it and you refresh it regularly. But I think there are probably some better ways to use small amounts of excess wool. For one, wool is rich in several nutrients, including NPK, but also iron, among others. In that way, wool can make a nice addition to compost piles, but also some wool producers are offering wool pellets as a fertilizer. I like the landscape fabric idea. I don't know that I've actually seen that, but I think that could be a cool idea too. I think if you are able to get it for free, the wool, or cheap, the compost piles make a lot of sense to me, but so too does using it as a supplementary mulch, say beneath a deep compost system in place of cardboard, or possibly under wood chips in the pathway to increase their longevity and weed suppression abilities a bit. So where cardboard is often applied and then compost is piled over top, wool could instead take that spot. Though the science isn't super robust on it, some say it has a natural repellent effect on everything from deer to moles to slugs, though others say it attracts slugs. So, maybe be a little cautious with your expectations there. But for me, I think just treating it more as an opportunity for soil health is the way to go. Looking online, there are not a lot of obvious places here in the US that just have abundant mulch level supplies of wool that they can ship you. So finding it locally is going to be probably key to this. I see a couple places that offer seconds wool for a fee for pickup only. If you're having to pay much for it though, it's probably not going to be worth it to use it as a mulch or necessarily in the compost pile. A $6 bale of straw is going to cover like 30 to 50 square feet, depending on how deep you put it. If $6 in wool doesn't get you, like close to that, then it's probably not worth it. Though to throw $6 at a compost ingredient, that doesn't hurt. Shred it, mix it in, break it up a little bit for it to break down more rapidly. The garden should appreciate that in the long run. I love it as an idea, though. Like I said, a mulch you can grow from your pastures. I'm definitely good with that. Plus, I love sheep. Very easy to manage in terms of livestock, and the babies are super cute. Anyway, not much more to say on that subject for the moment, but we always get good and insightful comments when I talk about wool here. So listeners, please feel free and feel encouraged to add your 2 cents or 3 cents or 4 if you've got it. Have you any wool thoughts? Had to do it. Let us know, and otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, keeping the CSA interesting while making a dang living. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 48 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all caps, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Ohio Earth Food. So you got your soil tested or need your soil tested, it's time to contact Ohio Earth Food. Since 1972, they have been growers' trusted source for organic soil amendments to apply before you plant to prevent those deficiency symptoms that limit production. Their knowledgeable staff have all been a part of certified organic operations and can help you choose the best products for your soil and deliver or ship them right to your farm. With locations in Northwest Ohio and just north of Madison, Wisconsin, Ohio Earth Food wants to be your partner for organic inputs. Don't count on luck this year. Start your seeds in the Seed Catapult potting soil and put their Revita fertilizers in your beds, and rest assured that your plants will have all the nutrients, stimulants, and energy for whatever comes their way. Feed your soil and let your soil feed the plants. Visit them at ohioearthfood.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions now. Today's second Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Nathan Meadows, who asks, quote, "Hey Jesse, as we head into planting season, I have been thinking about taking 6 of our beds and reserving them for planting just for our CSA. It's been tricky to strike a balance between CSA plantings and large plantings for other accounts. I don't want to plant too much of something random to keep our CSA members interested, and then we won't be able to sell the rest of the bed. On the other hand, I don't want our CSA members bored with the same few things that we can sell large amounts of to restaurants. What challenges do you see in having a dedicated CSA plot?" End quote. All right, love this. Thanks, Nathan. This is a cool and interesting question. So yes, keeping the CSA interesting can be a challenge even if you don't have other accounts competing for the growing space. It sounds like you are in somewhat of a CSA plus restaurant wholesale model, which can be a bit of a difficult combo for reasons that you kind of laid out there. The wholesale side probably benefits the CSA by giving you the potatoes and garlic or whatever bulk crops that you need, but hurts the CSA side by not having an outlet for those lesser known crops that CSAs often require. A farmer's market, by contrast, might pair better, but obviously that doesn't mean change your model. It can just as easily mean get creative like you are with the dedicated beds idea. Now, the idea, as it seems to me, is that you would plant 6 beds to crops that would keep the CSA interesting, and you're curious what challenges there could be with that idea. Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is simply organization. Having one complex plot like that will mean that it needs more attention in the crop planning phase and consistent execution throughout the season. On the crop planting side, you will have to have a good rotation of plant families and careful consideration of timing, as you probably already have to. I'm assuming here that each plot of 6 beds would get a single crop instead of trying to split the beds between crops, which of course would add another level of difficulty. For instance, what is the weed management going to be there? If you are having beds coming in and out of production in successions, using a tarp, for instance, may be a challenge. So you'd likely have to have a weed management approach that either doesn't rely on occultation like tarps or relies on single bed occultation like landscape fabric or something. For me, I don't see any major issues with this idea. I kind of think it probably could work well. And people do grow that way, so it should work. I do think it's important, however, to make sure to do the math this season to make sure that it, this idea makes sense economically, to take those 6 beds and use them for those kinds of crops. Do those 6 beds for the CSA generate enough income for the labor involved in managing them to continue with the CSA? Or would they better serve you as maybe like 6 more wholesale beds? Now, there are reasons beyond profit and budget that, people run a CSA, like community, obviously. So that should also be factored in there. But sometimes, maybe even just oftentimes, farm decisions are simply business decisions, math decisions. For us, we did our CSA concurrently with our farmers market, and the two were quite symbiotic. Extras from the CSA could go to the farmer's market and vice versa. The farmer's market could, for instance, take extra squash for a couple weeks while we gave the CSA a break from squash. The CSA could take, lettuce in the spring when everyone at market started, showing up with it in bulk and our sales on lettuce went down. But for every farm model, it's going to be a little bit different. So anyway, curious what you all think about this. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get one last question about trellising in wider beds. There's more to that than you may think. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. All right, our third and final Patreon question comes to us from Tomer, who writes, quote, "Hello, Jesse. Thank you for your show. I'm Tomer from the north of Israel, Zone 10B, I think, and I'm in my first growing season at my new market garden, Ma Rabu Garden, hoping to bring peace to the soil and by that to the people. Currently, I'm planning for my spring and summer and trying to figure out how to space the crops in my 120 centimeter beds, roughly 4-foot beds. It's my first time growing in a wide bed inspired by you. In my last garden, I have 80 centimeter beds, that would be roughly 30 inches, and it worked great for fall and winter crops, but I'm still not sure how to approach the summer ones, especially the ones that need trellising like tomatoes and cucumbers. Thank you for your answers and inspiration. Soon I will send you a video of my Middle Eastern Living Pathways trial," end quote. All right, great stuff here, Tomer, and we look forward to the video of your pathways for sure. So yes, this is a good question. Basically, when you go to wider beds, how do you manage the trellis situation? Because a lot of space gets wasted, and you can't exactly do 2 rows of tomatoes out in the field, at least, even though, there is enough technical room on the bed for you to get 2 rows. In theory, though you can do 2 rows in a tunnel, and we have done that several times in the past to up the diversity of our cherry tomato selection, for instance, hanging them from the above trellis and pruning them heavily so that they don't, crowd each other too much. So strictly speaking about the field, for tomatoes, we typically go with 1 row down the middle of the bed with a crop like beets or lettuce planted on the sides to make the most of that space while the tomatoes grow. Peppers are a little bit different because you can actually fit and trellis 2 rows of peppers on a 48-inch bed, 122 centimeters. The bed must be well watered and very fertile, obviously, but you can technically do it. And then trellis with a shorter trellis. I usually do 1 tall T-post on the end of each bed and then 1 directly in the middle with shorter stakes in between them, and then some string just to hold up the base of the plant. Peppers usually only need a little bit of trellising to hold them up, especially in our climate, because they don't last long enough to get too tall for that. Give them enough space and they don't need a trellis at all in the right situations, but in a bio-intensive situation, you got to plant them pretty close. Harvest can be a little difficult, just finding the peppers in the middle of a 2-row bed, but it is possible for sure, and to save some space. Now, for cucumbers, it's back to the single row and using the space on the sides for a quick interplant. Peas and pole beans, it's the same thing. Single row, single trellis. It's been a while since I've grown peas, but I've had decent success planting them with spinach on the sides as the sort of interplant. With crops like squash, it works well to simply plant a single row in the middle, though at like 18 to 24 inches apart. That would be like up to 60 centimeters. And I've also done them kind of staggered in 2 rows with them like 2 feet apart in each of those rows, with the rows only like a foot apart. So what that looks like is 2 rows that are kind of close together, but with the plants staggered at about 2 feet apart in their individual row. So they're kind of in the center, but not directly in the center. And then that way you can squeeze a few more plants in. Anyway, yeah, one of the reasons I like the, wider beds, or liked them to begin with, was that the interplanting potential there is really huge because there's just so much space on the bed top, but it is also equally possible to just waste that growing space if you don't put anything there on the sides of those, trellised crops. And to be clear, we don't always put anything there now that we've slowed down a bit, which feels a bit wasteful at times. Not gonna lie. So what we usually do is some sort of ground cover or some sort of cover crop. But in a production context, especially on a small farm, that is valuable space next to the trellises. Also, go back and listen to the wider bed segment I did recently for more insight on what that transition was like for us and some of the things I've learned in going from smaller to larger beds. There is more on different spacings in there, I think, as well. All right, let me know your all's thoughts, listeners. Otherwise, that is it for this Thursday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of January, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to... Looks like we've got no new signups or bump ups yesterday, which is fine, but that means a lot is riding on tomorrow to finish out our story with a bang. That could be tough. A literal bang? I guess we shall see. Don't forget, if you like the show or appreciate the work we do, chipping in a few bucks keeps it all going, keeps these stories going, which is something. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow for Feedback Friday. Get your feedback in. That's all I can Friday it. Yep, I did that. All right, bye.